A single dad waiter saved a young woman in the rain. Days later, his daughter recognized her on TV. The rain came down like it had something to prove, pounding the streets until the city felt smaller, lonelier, and harder to survive. Water flooded the gutters, headlights blurred into streaks of white and red, and every sound seemed swallowed by the storm. Daniel Reyes stood beneath the cracked awning of the roadside diner where he worked, rolling up his sleeves as the final customers of the night paid their bills. His shoes were soaked, his back ached, and the smell of coffee clung to his clothes. At 36, Daniel carried the quiet exhaustion of a man who never had the luxury of rest. Being a single father didn't allow for it. Inside the diner, laughter echoed from a booth, careless and warm. Daniel smiled politely as he wiped the counter, already counting the tips in his head. Rent was due. Lily needed new shoes. The math never quite worked, but somehow he always made it stretch. When the door finally closed behind the last customer, Daniel reached for his jacket, preparing to step into the rain and head toward the bus stop. That was when he noticed her. She stood across the street, half hidden beneath a broken streetlight. Barefoot, her heels dangled from one hand, her fingers white with cold. Rain plastered her hair to her face. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, and her coat looked thin, more suited for autumn than a night like this. Cars passed without slowing. Drivers stared straight ahead, as if seeing her might require something they didn't have to give. The woman didn't move. She just stood there, frozen, like the world had forgotten her. Daniel felt it before he thought it. That tug in his chest. The one that reminded him of another night years ago, when grief had left him standing alone in the dark, unsure how to take the next step. He stepped off the curb, ignoring the cold water soaking through his socks. "Miss," he called out, his voice rough against the rain. She turned sharply, eyes wide with panic. For a second, Daniel worried she might run. Instead, her shoulders sagged, as if holding herself upright had finally become too much. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, stopping a few feet away, careful not to scare her. She shook her head, lips trembling. "I don't know where to go," she whispered, barely audible. That was enough. Daniel shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. She flinched, then relaxed as the warmth settled in. He guided her back beneath the diner's awning and sat her on a crate. Inside, he bought a cup of coffee with his own money and handed it to her, watching her hands shake as she drank. Her name was Emily Carter. Her phone was dead. Her ride never came. She'd just left an interview that went terribly wrong, and when the rain started, everything else seemed to fall apart with it. Daniel listened without interrupting. He knew the value of being heard. When the rain finally softened, Daniel walked her to the bus stop, pressing a few folded bills into her hand. "Just get home safe," he said. Emily looked at him like she wanted to remember his face forever. "You saved me tonight," she whispered. Daniel watched the bus disappear into the storm, unaware that this small moment would follow him home and change everything. Morning arrived quietly, as if the storm had taken all its noise with it. Pale light crept through the thin curtains of Daniel's apartment, touching the peeling walls and the stack of unpaid envelopes on the counter. Daniel woke before his alarm, lungs tight from the cold he'd earned the night before. He sat up slowly, listening for the soft sounds of his daughter breathing in the next room, letting himself rest for exactly one peaceful minute before the day demanded him again. Lily was already awake, sitting cross-legged on her bed, humming as she braided a doll's hair. She looked up and smiled, the kind of smile that reminded Daniel why he kept going when his body begged him not to. "Daddy," she said, squinting at him, "you sound like you swallowed the rain." He laughed quietly and kissed her forehead. "Just a little cold." She narrowed her eyes with suspicion, then glanced at the empty hook by the door. "You gave your jacket away again, didn't you?" Daniel hesitated, then shrugged. Someone needed it more. Lily nodded as if this was a rule of the universe she'd already accepted. "Mama would have done the same," she said simply. The words stung and healed all at once. Daniel packed Lily's lunch with careful precision, cutting the sandwich into triangles the way she liked and slipping a handwritten note into the bag. The note was crooked, the letters uneven, but it always said the same thing, "Be brave today." Lily tucked it into her pocket like a secret treasure before slipping on her backpack. After dropping her at school, Daniel caught the bus to the diner. His shift dragged on, the smell of grease and coffee blending with the ache in his shoulders. Customers complained about the weather, about slow service, about prices Daniel had no control over. He smiled anyway. He always did. Kindness cost less than bitterness, even on days when he had very little to give. The woman from the rain stayed in his thoughts longer than he expected, not because he wanted something from her, but because she reminded him of a version of himself he'd nearly lost. Someone fragile, someone standing one bad moment away from giving up. Daniel hoped she'd made it home safe. That was enough. That evening, Daniel and Lily shared instant noodles on the couch, the television humming softly in the background. Lily chattered about school, about a science project, and a boy who kept stealing her crayons. Daniel listened, nodding, pretending he wasn't calculating bills in his head. The news interrupted with dramatic music and flashing graphics. Lily fell silent. A woman appeared on the screen, standing confidently behind a row of microphones. Her hair was neat, her posture strong, her eyes steady. Reporters shouted questions as her name appeared beneath her face. "Emily Carter." Lily leaned forward, squinting. "Daddy," she said slowly, pointing at the screen. "That's her." Daniel followed her finger and the room seemed to tilt. It was the woman from the rain, clean, composed, unrecognizable, yet unmistakably the same. The anchor called her a corporate executive, a whistleblower, a woman challenging powerful people. Lily's voice trembled with certainty. "That's the lady you helped." Daniel swallowed hard, staring at the screen as Emily spoke about courage and fear. He felt something settle deep in his chest, heavy and warm at the same time. The rain, the coffee, the bus ride into the night replayed in his mind. He'd thought that moment was over. He was wrong. The truth was moving toward him, faster than he could imagine now. Emily's voice filled the living room, steady but charged with emotion. Daniel and Lily sat on the couch, frozen as she recounted the events leading to her sudden rise in the public eye. She spoke not about victories, but about moments of vulnerability, the nights she stayed awake, doubting herself, afraid to move forward, afraid the world would crush her entirely. She told the story of a corporate scandal she had uncovered, the pressure to stay silent, and the countless times she considered giving up. Her hands gestured as she spoke, calm yet deliberate, her words sharp enough to cut through the noise of the television and the lingering echo of last week's storm. Daniel's chest tightened. Every detail Emily shared mirrored the fear he had seen in her eyes that rainy night. He remembered the trembling of her hands as she clutched her shoes, the mascara running down her cheeks, the hopelessness that seemed to weigh her down like water. He had been the one to offer warmth, a cup of coffee, a small measure of comfort in a city that often forgot kindness. Now, months later, she was standing on national television, her courage recognized, but Daniel knew it wasn't her own alone. Somewhere deep in the story, the night and the rain lingered. Somewhere, the kindness of a stranger had made the difference. Lily leaned against Daniel's shoulder, her small hand clutching his arm. "Daddy," she whispered, "she's talking about you." Her wide eyes shone with pride, as though she had been waiting her entire life to witness the heroism she already knew existed in her father. Daniel shook his head. "No, Lily, she's talking about kindness, about helping someone when no one else does. That's different. But it's the same thing." Lily insisted. "You helped her. You were brave too." Daniel couldn't argue with that. He smiled faintly, letting the words settle. The world often celebrated visible acts of bravery, ignoring quiet ones performed in silence. And yet, here she was, acknowledging it, albeit indirectly. The next day, the story exploded. Social media feeds overflowed with clips of Emily speaking passionately about ethics and accountability. News outlets ran headlines praising her bravery, her name trending nationwide. Then came the private interviews where she mentioned the stranger in the rain, the single dad, the waiter, who had given her his jacket and a few bills without expecting recognition or reward. She didn't know his full name. She only knew he had helped her when the world seemed indifferent. The news industry treated it like a mystery, speculating endlessly about who this man could be. Daniel remained quiet. He didn't need the spotlight. He had Lily, their modest apartment, the rhythm of everyday life that he had carefully balanced despite the years of hardship. Yet, a small, uneasy curiosity gnawed at him. What if she remembered more than she admitted? What if the world caught up to the quiet act he had considered trivial? Lily, meanwhile, refused to leave the story alone. Every morning she pressed the news against his chest. "We have to find him," she said, though she was referring to the stranger she already knew. "He deserves to be thanked." Daniel laughed softly, heartwarming and heavy. "Sometimes, Lily, the right thing isn't about recognition. It's about being kind, no matter who notices." Yet even as he spoke, Daniel felt an unfamiliar tension. The world had a way of catching up, and Emily's words were a current, flowing closer to them than he could see. Perhaps the night in the rain was only the beginning, not an ending, but a thread connecting their lives in ways he had never imagined. And somewhere, he knew, Emily's search would continue until she found the person who mattered most. The storm had ended, but its echo was returning. It carried hope, fear, recognition, and the promise that sometimes the simplest acts could ripple farther than anyone expected. Daniel braced himself, unaware that their lives were on the verge of intersecting again in a way neither of them could have predicted. Lily was determined. She didn't understand the full magnitude of what her father had done for Emily, nor did she fully grasp the attention the story had generated. All she knew was that a brave woman had spoken of kindness, and that kindness had a name, her daddy's. That realization burned inside her like a small flame, unextinguished by reason or hesitation. One quiet afternoon, armed with crayons and a sheet of notebook paper, Lily sat at the kitchen table and began to draw. She sketched her father, his jacket wrapped around a smaller, shivering figure, rain streaking the street in jagged lines. She drew umbrellas, clouds, and a bus disappearing into the night, every detail painstakingly preserved, every memory reimagined with the clarity only a child could possess. Then, with a shaky hand, she wrote a letter to the news station. "This is my daddy. He helped her, she should know who he is." Daniel noticed the focused silence first. He peeked into the kitchen and saw Lily leaning so far over the paper that her hair brushed the tabletop. He felt a pang of warmth and fear simultaneously. Warmth because she was remembering, honoring, celebrating the act he had dismissed as small. Fear because children were too often ignored by the world and too rarely credited for their insight. "What are you working on?" he asked gently, careful not to startle her. "I'm telling the world about you, Daddy," she said without looking up. Her voice was confident, as if she knew this would be the only way Emily would ever see him again. She needs to know who helped her in the rain. Daniel swallowed, unsure how to respond. He wanted to stop her, protect her from disappointment, from exposure, from the reality that the world could be cruel. But she had made her decision already. Her courage was fierce, inherited in part from him, in part from the generosity he tried to live by. He watched silently as she folded the letter, tucked it into an envelope, and carefully addressed it to the station that had aired Emily's interview. The next week passed slowly. Daniel returned to the diner, Lily to school. Each day, he wondered if the letter would ever reach Emily, if the truth of a quiet act of bravery could be amplified into something tangible. Then one late afternoon, a sleek black car pulled up outside the diner, headlights slicing through the golden glow of sunset. Daniel wiped his hands on a rag, thinking it must be a delivery, a journalist perhaps, or someone lost. But when the door opened, the figure that emerged made his heart stop. It was Emily. Hair neat, coat sharp, but her eyes, those same eyes Daniel had glimpsed in the rain, searched immediately for him. Recognition lit across her face like sunlight breaking through clouds. "It was you," she said, voice trembling as if the words had been held inside her since that rainy night. Daniel stepped forward, unsure how to meet her gaze. He had imagined this reunion countless times, in moments of quiet reflection, but nothing felt prepared enough. "Yes," he said simply, the single word heavy with unspoken stories. Emily closed the distance, embracing him with the urgency of someone who had carried gratitude for far too long. Cameras flashed without warning. Neighbors leaned from windows, astonished at the spectacle. But in that embrace, the world outside seemed to fade. All that existed were the two people whose lives had collided in a storm, bound together by courage in a single act of human kindness. Lily ran to them, tugging at Daniel's sleeve. "You see, Daddy, I told you she'd remember," she said, eyes shining. Emily knelt to meet Lily's gaze, smiling warmly. "And what a brave little girl you are," she said. "Thank you for helping me find him." In that moment, Daniel realized the depth of a child's courage. Lily's simple faith, her insistence that the truth be seen, had brought them together. It was not money, fame, or influence that had reunited them. It was honesty, clarity, and a belief that good deeds should not be left unnoticed. The storm had passed, but its echoes were louder than Daniel could have imagined. The night of rain had been only the beginning, and Lily's courage had turned a quiet act of kindness into a story that would change lives forever. Daniel understood that now, not as a lesson, but as a truth experienced, visible in the eyes of the girl who had reminded him that courage can come from the smallest hearts. Emily didn't arrive that day to repay Daniel with money, though she certainly had the means. She came to offer something far more valuable: acknowledgement, opportunity, and the assurance that his quiet bravery had not gone unnoticed. The diner smelled of fried onions and coffee as she stepped inside, her presence commanding attention without demanding it. Daniel's heart pounded, his hands gripping the counter for balance. He had long since stopped expecting recognition for his acts of kindness. Helping people was never about awards or accolades. It was about humanity. Yet here she was, a successful, confident woman who had been changed by the smallest gesture he had given, standing in front of him, offering a world of possibilities. Emily's eyes softened as she spoke. "I didn't forget you," she said simply. "I've never forgotten that night. You saved me when I felt invisible. You reminded me that even in the darkest moment, someone could care. I want to do something for you, not as charity, but as respect." Her words hung in the air, as if measuring the weight of gratitude against the simplicity of what had occurred. Daniel nodded, unsure what to say. His life had been defined by struggle, sacrifice, and quiet perseverance. He wasn't accustomed to this kind of acknowledgement. He wanted to refuse, to maintain the small dignity he had carefully preserved over the years. But Emily's gaze, steady and unwavering, made refusal impossible. She outlined her plan. Emily had quietly paid off Daniel's overdue bills, freeing him from the crushing anxiety that rent and utilities had imposed. She had arranged scholarships for Lily's education, ensuring that her daughter would never lack opportunity. And finally, she offered Daniel a position in her company, not out of charity, but because she respected the kind of integrity and compassion he had demonstrated, the same qualities that had made her life better when she needed it most. "I don't want to save you," she said. "I want to stand with you." Daniel's chest tightened. He could hardly believe the magnitude of what she was offering. A man who had been defined by small victories and quiet endurance suddenly found himself in the presence of life-altering generosity. But he also understood the lesson Emily carried. True kindness rarely seeks repayment, but when it meets acknowledgement, it transforms both giver and receiver. Lily watched with wide eyes, her small hands clasped together in disbelief. "Daddy," she remembers, she whispered, her voice trembling with awe. "She remembers everything." Daniel smiled at her, feeling a rush of pride so deep it seemed to lift the weight from his shoulders. This moment, this intersection of lives, was proof that courage, empathy, and small acts of kindness were never wasted. Even in the most ordinary lives, extraordinary impact could ripple outward, unseen until the right moment revealed it. In the weeks that followed, Daniel began transitioning into his new role. The diner became less central to their lives, replaced by offices, meetings, and challenges he had never imagined facing. Yet, despite the change in environment, the principles remained the same. He treated everyone with respect, listened with attention, and remembered the small human gestures that made the difference. He realized that the world often overlooked those who quietly sacrificed, but kindness, when multiplied, was an unstoppable force. Emily's recognition was validation, yes, but it was also a reminder that a single act of compassion could change the course of a life. Emily remained in their lives, not as a savior or overseer, but as a friend, a mentor, and a constant reminder that humanity mattered. She and Daniel forged a bond built on trust, gratitude, and shared values, while Lily continued to grow, inspired by both the example of her father and the woman he had once helped. The storm of that night had ended long ago, but its echo persisted, reverberating through their lives with clarity and purpose. Daniel often reflected on that night in the rain, the moment he had chosen to act despite exhaustion and uncertainty. He understood now that kindness, however small, always comes full circle. The impact may take time, recognition may be delayed, but goodness has a way of returning, brighter and stronger than ever. And in the heart of his daughter and the gratitude of Emily Carter, Daniel found a truth he had always hoped to live by, that one life touched with care could change countless others forever. Months passed, and life for Daniel and Lily began to settle into a rhythm that was unfamiliar yet comforting. The stress of rent and overdue bills had disappeared like a heavy fog, replaced by the steady hum of possibility. Daniel had stepped into his new role with cautious optimism, learning the ropes of management under Emily's guidance. It wasn't just a job. It was a doorway into a world he had once thought inaccessible, a chance to use his skills and values in ways that extended beyond a single diner. He still remembered the nights of exhaustion and worry, the endless calculations to make every penny stretch, and he never took this second chance for granted. Lily flourished in this new life, her bright intelligence and curious nature nurtured by opportunities her father had never imagined she would have. Emily quietly ensured that Lily had access to the best tutors and experiences, but she allowed Daniel to maintain his role as primary guide and mentor. It was important to both of them that Lily saw her father's integrity and perseverance as the foundation of her success, not simply the financial windfall that had arrived unexpectedly. Daniel often caught her reading late at night, writing stories or sketching, her imagination spilling across the pages with the freedom that stability and encouragement brought. Evenings became a time for reflection. Daniel would walk home from work with Lily, holding her hand through quiet streets, pointing out stars or telling her stories about the resilience of ordinary people. They would sit at the small kitchen table, sharing meals and conversations, laughing over small jokes, and sometimes just sitting in companionable silence. Life was far from perfect, but it was lighter, brighter, and imbued with hope that had once seemed elusive. Emily continued to be a presence in their lives, but she never imposed. She was a reminder of what could happen when courage met kindness, a living example of the impact of compassion. She celebrated Lily's achievements quietly and offered guidance to Daniel when challenges arose, but she also knew when to step back, allowing father and daughter to navigate their world together. This balance, delicate and thoughtful, cemented a bond of trust and mutual respect that benefited all three of them. Daniel often thought back to the rainy night that had begun this chain of events. What had seemed like a small act, offering a jacket, guiding a frightened young woman to safety, had grown into something extraordinary. The world, with all its unpredictability, had a way of turning quiet choices into life-altering consequences. He realized that courage did not always come with recognition, and kindness was rarely rewarded immediately. Yet, when the right circumstances aligned, the smallest gestures could become monumental. He and Lily sometimes laughed about the night of the rainstorm, the bus that carried Emily away, and the way a single act of humanity had rippled outward in ways they could never have predicted. It became a story they revisited often, a tale of hope and the quiet power of doing what is right, even when no one is watching. It reminded them that life, though unpredictable and sometimes harsh, could be shaped by compassion, patience, and courage. In these moments, Daniel understood that the new beginning he lived now was not simply a matter of comfort or security. It was the culmination of choices, small and deliberate, that had carried them through adversity. He had found a rhythm where work, family, and friendship intertwined, each reinforcing the other. The night of rain had been only the first chapter, but the lessons it imparted, kindness, resilience, courage, had become the foundation for every day that followed. Life had shifted, and Daniel, for the first time in many years, allowed himself to believe that the future could be brighter than he had ever dared to hope. Years later, Daniel sat in the front row of a packed auditorium, his hands folded in his lap, watching his daughter stand on the stage. Lily, now older and confident, held the microphone with the poise of someone who understood the weight of her words. The audience was silent, waiting, captivated by the story she was about to tell. Daniel felt a swell of pride that tightened his chest, a quiet, steady rhythm of joy that reminded him of the rainy night so many years ago. It had begun with a single act of kindness, a jacket given without expectation, a stranger guided to safety, and now, decades later, that moment had grown into a lesson he never imagined would reach so far. Lily's voice rang out clear and steady. "Courage isn't always loud," she said. "Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's giving your jacket to someone who needs it more than you. Sometimes it's standing with someone when the world ignores them." She looked directly at Daniel, her eyes shining, the connection unmistakable. He felt a lump rise in his throat. Every struggle, every sleepless night, every penny stretched too thin, it had all led to this. She was telling a story not just about a stranger who became a hero, but about him, about the life lessons he had instilled through his actions and choices. The audience listened, rapt, as Lily continued. She recounted the story of the rainy night, the woman who had stood barefoot in the street, and the single father who had refused to ignore her. She described how small acts of compassion could ripple outward in ways no one could predict. She spoke of fear, hope, and resilience, and the power of kindness that required nothing in return. Every word was deliberate, every pause meaningful, and Daniel realized that through her, the story had transformed into something larger than himself. It had become a message for the world. Emily Carter, seated in the audience, smiled quietly. She had watched from the very beginning, proud not only of Lily's courage, but of the man who had quietly changed her life. She had long understood the significance of Daniel's actions, but seeing it expressed through his daughter brought the impact into full clarity. This was the legacy of kindness. It transcended the immediate moment, it grew, it inspired, and it reached beyond the boundaries of time and circumstance. Emily's eyes met Daniel's briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, a shared understanding of how one night in the rain had shifted the trajectories of their lives forever. Daniel thought of the countless ordinary moments that had led to this extraordinary one. The nights spent working double shifts, the careful braiding of Lily's hair, the hurried lunches, the whispered prayers that tomorrow would be kinder. All of it had built a foundation strong enough for this day. He realized that heroism did not always announce itself. Sometimes it appeared as the quiet man who gave his jacket to a stranger, trusting that small gestures mattered. As the applause filled the auditorium, Daniel rose, tears pricking at the corners of his eyes. Lily smiled down at him, radiant with the certainty that she had honored his life and choices in the most profound way. He understood now that kindness, once sown, had a life of its own. It could travel farther, touch more hearts, and inspire more courage than anyone could ever predict. And sometimes, the greatest lesson a parent could teach was not in words, but in the actions performed quietly, with love and integrity. The night ended, but the story lived on. Daniel walked home with Lily afterward, holding her hand, both of them aware of the invisible threads connecting their lives to those they had helped and who had helped them. He knew that in teaching kindness, he had given Lily a gift she would carry forever. And in that understanding, Daniel smiled, realizing that the smallest act, an umbrella shared, a jacket given, a hand held in the rain, could echo across a lifetime, shaping hearts and futures in ways no one could measure.